And welcome back, students. We're going to today start talking about CSS, or Cascading Style Sheets. And up to this point, we've done a lot of stuff with putting content on the web page, but of course, you may have noticed that everything's kind of black and white, a little cut and dry and boring. So what we're going to do today is be able to add things like color to text. Something simple like that. And we're going to really get to explore a lot of those different things as we go along. Now, with CSS, there's a general format that it follows. Format is always the selector, followed by a pair of curly brackets, and a declaration with a semicolon. So I'll show you an example of what that looks like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here into my document head, and right after my title, I'm going to place the text style. So that's my tag there to indicate CSS. And I'm going to go ahead and put inside this style tag a simple thing. So I'm just going to say, let's take the paragraph color, and you can see as soon as I put those curly brackets, it's going to offer me suggestions. I'm going to make the color, and let's just make it red. And then, of course, just end up with a semicolon just to indicate the end of that. And you'll see that my paragraph text color in here has changed. And I had left some stuff in here from our last exercise, just so you can kind of see how stuff gets changed. Now, let's say I want to do something more with this. Maybe I want to change the color to red, and I also maybe want to change the font size. Well, I can come in here and do that pretty easily. Right after this semicolon for red, I'm going to add in here font size. You see Dreamweaver is prompting me for all those different things. And I'm just going to say 12px, semicolon. And the px, of course, is just short for pixels. So if you look, you'll see in here now the text has changed in size because now it is 12 pixels. You can do similar things with like headings and all the other different tags that are available inside of HTML. You can apply all kinds of different formattings to them. However, what I've done so far up to this point is use what is known as internal styling. So it's all happening on the web page itself, which is great if you have, like, let's say, for example, one web page. But usually we're not building just one web page, we're building a full website, which is something that we will move to eventually. If we want to make a full website, we'll want to use what's called an external style sheet. And an external style sheet doesn't have this style here. So this doesn't exist with an external style sheet. And what we're actually going to want to do is get used to using external style sheets for what we're going to be creating here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to this corner up here, and you can see in here under the CSS Designer tab, there's this little plus arrow right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a CSS file that's going to control the CSS of my web page. And the nice thing is, once I've created this, I can link that CSS file to any successive web pages, and that style will get applied to all of them. Now, you might say, well, if we're going to use external, why did I have to know about the internal? Well, occasionally you might change a specific element on, let's say, one web page, and you don't want to go and create a whole new CSS file. You just want to change just like maybe one or two things. Like maybe you want to change just like the font color on one of your web pages. Maybe instead of black, you want it to be like blue, or you may want to change the background. You can do that using that style method, using the internal CSS code. But for what we're working with, just to start off, just so you can get in the practice of using the external style sheet, we're going to do this. So I'm going to click on this plus arrow here, and you'll see there's an option right here that says create a new CSS file. So I click on that, and in here it's going to ask me for a file URL. So I'm going to click on Browse, and it's going to say, okay, where do you want to save this? Well, let's look at my web design folder. Here's my HTML, and this should have that same folder where this HTML exercise 1 document is. And what we're going to do is we're just going to call this main for now. Okay. Now, when you do your labs, you should probably want to call your CSS file whatever the name of your lab is. Or if you're going to be linking it, you'll have to make sure that you're sending over the CSS file with all the new changes in it. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second here. Let me just finish creating this by clicking Save. You'll see that it updates it in there. And click OK. It adds right here this file that says main.css. And right now that looks pretty blank. Now, again, best practice, make sure you go to File, Save All here, and just have File Save or Control S. And the reason why you want to do File Save All here is because if you make changes to your HTML page and you make changes to your CSS page, if you do File Save, it's only going to save whatever the active window is. So if you're on your CSS file, it's only going to save the CSS file. If you're on your HTML file, it's only going to save the HTML file. Alright, so in here, you'll notice this is like a HTML exercise 1, your main file there for the CSS document. Now, up to this point, you've only had to include the HTML file with each lab. However, in this unit, you're going to have to send in the HTML exercise if applicable. Otherwise, you will always have to send in to me your CSS file. Now, if you choose to do one for each lab, that's fine. Just make sure you're naming it accordingly. Or if you choose to do one CSS file and then just link it in, you can do that as well. And if you want to link that in, it's not that hard. What you do is you just come here to Add, and then you choose Attach Existing CSS File. So when you make your lab for today, you'll have to create one, but then when you do your lab for next time, you're going to have to attach an existing CSS file. So let me just go ahead and bounce back to the CSS code here, and let's talk about that a little bit more. All right, if I go and look inside my source code, of course is my HTML. You'll see here under my title, it's added this link here. All right, link href main CSS, and saying it's a style sheet. This is the code that goes into my web page that tells me that there's changes that need to be made. All right, that tells me there's CSS files that are going to be pulled in. Rather than using a style tag, it uses this link, and then I put all my styling here on its main.css file. So let's go ahead and put some code in here, and then as I enter in, you should see some changes happen over here to the page. So I'm just going to put a couple in here. I went ahead and just put in some quick code here, just so you can see some of the different things that we can do. And you can see I have 3 different text alignments in here. I've demonstrated what a center alignment looks like, a right alignment, and a left alignment. Left alignment is kind of how HTML does things by default, but you can, of course, specify that it is left aligned. You also have the options of colors in here. I just demonstrated 3 basic colors. There's red, blue, and orange. And you'll notice that the code is, again, very similar here. Now, let's just say I wanted to make these, all the same here. So let me just go ahead and make this all. So let's say these are all the same. So I'm just going to make this center. And we're going to change these all to red, just so you can see something here. All right, now you'll see that if I do this, the text line is still centered, right? And the color red has been passed along. Now, there is a way to kind of shortcut this rather than having me to type all this out, because if I have to type a lot less, that's great. I mean, it's less work I have to do. And how we can do this is by grouping the selectors. So if I have some common CSS, like right now, everything is the same. What I can do is actually group these. So I'm just going to delete these two off. I'm going to go right here to H1. And by grouping, it means I'm going to put a comma and then list the other elements that also share that CSS property. And you can see now that all of those elements have those properties. They're all text align center and they're all red. This is not only a faster way of coding, of course, but it's actually a better way of coding. Because in this instance, the browsers automatically apply the styles to H1, H2, and the paragraph tag, rather than first trying to do all the stuff to H1, then doing all the stuff to H2, and then so on and so forth. So it is actually a lot better way, and this is considered to be best practice. So as you go through your code, if you have something that does stuff like this, make sure you group your selectors. Other than that, folks, that concludes this lesson, and until next time.